Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm especially excited because I have with me a pupil barrister, Mr. Brad Lewis. He is a criminal pupil barrister at QEB Hollis Whiteman, and he started his pupillage in October 2020. Now, today we are going to discuss the life of a pupil barrister, and we do know that the pupillage gateway is open and it will be closing soon as well. So I think in this episode, we'll try our best to answer any questions and any hot topics that comes up around pupillage. So, Brad, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, really, thank you very much because we always need these kind of questions answered. Now, before we get straight into it, do you mind giving us an introduction into your journey of law? Oh gosh, I don't know if you can hear, but that's a truck passing. How terrible. Anyway, an introduction into your journey, so we can start with your LLB journey and then proceed to the bar course.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, Nia. Absolute pleasure to be here. Um, yes. So my name is Brad. I studied my LLB in the university, well, at the University of Liverpool. I did a straight law degree, 3-year law degree, and I graduated from Liverpool with a first class in year 2017. I went on, I decided then that education, well, I wasn't done with my education in a way. I'd done really well in my undergrad and I decided to pursue a master's. So I elected to do a LLM and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to the University of Cambridge. So I went and did a 1-year LLM, a 1-year master's in law at Cambridge at Gonville and Keyes College, which is where my scholarship came from. And after that, I went on to do the bar course, which I did in 2018 to 2019. Um,
Yeah, wow. So congratulations on your scholarship. I was
thank you.
tripping up over that word congratulations there. But congratulations on your scholarship.
Thank
So
you.
we do know that the bar course is a bit of a trying course.
Mhm.
You really have to hang in there. So where
Yeah.
did you pursue the bar course?
So I pursued the bar course in London, BPP London. It was to give a bit of background, uh, it was sort of a calculated decision in that I grew up in Nottingham. I'm from Nottingham. So the most sensible place would have been to do it at Nottingham Trent University. But I applied for a scholarship at Gray's Inn, and I was lucky enough to get one of these people to get one. And from that, you could apply for something called a residential scholarship, and I got that as well. And that's where they take in. It used to be 4 people, but now I think it's 12 a year. They take in a 12-ish students, and they put them in accommodation flats in Gray's Inn, and it's completely free. I say well, you get it as part of the scholarship, but you don't pay for bills, you don't pay for accommodation. So I was lucky enough to get that, and I thought by that point I wanted to pursue a career at the London bar. So I thought the best thing that I could do was go to a London provider. So that, and it would mean that I could apply for pupillage and go to interviews, because back then obviously interviews were in person. I could go to interviews more easily. So I did it at BPP London and I did it full time. So 2018 to 19, and was called in summer of 2019.
Well, again, congrats on your inner court scholarship. Those aren't easy to come by either. So that's a great achievement. Were you able to engage in any extracurricular activities during the period that you were studying? So from the LLB, during the LLM, or even on the bar course?
Absolutely. I think extracurriculars, not only do they help your CV, in terms of beefing it out and showing that you're kind of interested in more than just the law, they help enrich you as a person, and they give you more to talk about in interviews, and they give more for interviews to ask you about. So, for example, it'd be hard to list everything, but in terms of work-based or academic extracurriculars, uh, I worked in the law clinic in the University of Liverpool throughout the whole of my undergraduate degree. And we worked on things like the Hillsborough inquest. We worked on the case for an inquiry into the Battle of Orgreave. Give that a Google if it's unfamiliar. It was for me the first time I heard of it. We uh, we we represented asylum seekers and stateless persons that were seeking asylum in the UK. So yeah, that was one thing. I played rugby from being a kid, and I carried that on in university and played for my university. um, I joined the debate society for a while. I did all sorts, and then the bar course, I kind of it, it it stepped up a little bit in terms of, so I went to Cambridge, I carried on playing rugby, carried on these kind of academic-y extracurriculars, volunteering, pro bono work, and I rode as well. And then I went to the bar course, and it gets a bit more specific then, and there are more specific things on offer. Take advantage of them if you can. So one that I did was Vocalize. It's not running this year because of the pandemic, but I'm sure it'll be back on as soon as. It is where you go into prisons and you teach debating and public speaking to prisoners. And I did 2 cycles of that. So I taught 2 classes in total, one at HMP Downview, which is a women's prison, and one at HMP YOI ISIS, which is a young offenders institute next. It's the Young Offenders Institute that's attached to Belmarsh. So the two are part of the same kind of complex. And that was fantastic. You spend several weeks training the prisoners, and in the end, you have a debate against like Oxford Union debate team or Cambridge Union debate team, or for us, it was a judicial assistance team for HMP Downview, and it's an absolutely fantastic experience, and it gives you something to talk about in interviews. And there are other stuff as well, like school exclusion project, free representation unit, advocate, things like that you can engage in. All alternatives. Don't overload yourself, but get out there.
Definitely, because I can hear that you seem to have excellent time management skills, because you obviously have to get those grades and maintain a certain kind of standard academically, but you also did other things. And it's always clear Chambers tends to like three-dimensional people, people that can show that they can balance their time, and people that, have different experiences to bring to the table.
Absolutely. I mean, it's um, you'll see on a lot of applications, sort of guidance and things like that. What the words well-rounded, the phrase well-rounded. There's no better way of showing that than maintaining your interests and taking active interests in new things as you progress through your educational and vocational training.
Now, as it pertains to legal work experience,
Mhm.
before you applied for pupillage, how many mini pupillages would you say that you had, or how many opportunities did you seize in terms of legal work experience?
In terms of legal work experience, as many as I could get my hands on. Now, I wasn't one of these people that did 10 mini pupillages, because it is there, I don't think it's any secret that doing that many is actually a waste of time for you, to be perfectly honest. You want to do enough that you understand kind of what the career entails, and you want to show a demonstrated interest, but you don't want to do so many that you look unsure, or that you look like you don't know how to use your time effectively. So I did, I think, 3 mini pupilages. I'm just trying to think. I did one at Exchange in the Northwest. I did one at Red Lion Chambers. I did one at One High Pavement in Nottingham, and I might have done one more as well. So 3 or 4 minis. I was pretty set on doing crime, and in the exchange one, I looked at personal injury as well and decided it definitely wasn't for me. Um, and so that's another thing that you need to think about. Do you want to look at different chambers that do different practice areas so that you can kind of have a look before you pin your colours to the mast? Now, in terms of other stuff, that's where I kind of did more. And that was almost helpful in a way because no one asks really in interview, have you done any minis? How many minis have you done? Where have you done your minis? Because it's just taken as a given that you've done some, and it's taken as a given that you would have put them on the application. But the other stuff they ask about. So to take you through chronologically, I think so. Aside from minis, when I was end of my first year as an undergrad, I got a scholarship to Freshfields, Brookhouse, Derringer. It's called the Stephen Lawrence Scholarship. Can't recommend it enough, and it's aimed at tackling the diversity deficit in city firms. And as a result of that, you do several periods of work experience throughout a year, and in various teams in Freshfields head office in London. So that was one thing that I did. I did a series of work experience placements there, one in dispute resolution, one in intellectual property, one in the financial institutes disputes group, all very commercially type of stuff. And from that, and as a result of that, I did a legal internship in Goldman Sachs. So obviously investment bank kind of work, but the legal side of it. So rather than the revenue generating side, the kind of foundation business serving side. And I talked about the clinic work that I did and the pro bono work. That was a big thing in terms of legal work experience. But those, and I also, so I'm trying to think about now, but I clerked for the Centre for Criminal Appeals, and I did a few other kind of little bits and bobs here and there. And that was all what I did during the educational stage. And then the biggest thing was probably paralegaling. But by then I'd already got pupillage, but I did paralegal in a criminal firm in the Midlands, and I can't recommend it enough. If you have like an enforced gap year where you don't get pupillage the year you're applying, or you get pupillage and you have a year out anyway, fantastic experience.
Excellent advice. Now that we've gotten many pupillages out of the way, because as you rightfully highlighted, many people seem to think more is better, 10 is great. Um, there is another kind of aspect that students always ask about, and this has to do with choosing chambers. So
Mhm,
how do we go about deciding which chambers is more suitable or more suitable for our application, and
mhm,
how do we know, right there, that choice is the best choice for me? So what
mhm.
should students look for in a chamber?
There are so many things to look for. It's a fantastic question, Neo, and it's one of these that has a million and one answers. I'm not sure. So there was a talk uh, that I was part of a couple of weeks ago, with two barristers, and we talked about kind of diversity and looking for that in chambers. That's a big thing for me, looking for what is Chambers' approach to diversity, what how do they see themselves, how representative are they? That's one thing that you might want to think about. It might be important to you. Another thing is practice areas, and that's kind of a given. Do they do what you're interested in, or do they do what you think you might be interested in practicing in? And another one is, do they do enough of a breadth in terms of practice areas for you to kind of maintain an interest and for you to develop yourself and diversify yourself? If you're going into the criminal bar, it's very hard to just be a criminal legal aid barrister anymore. You need to do something else. So you want to have a look, maybe if you're applying for a criminal set, do they do other stuff? Regulatory, disciplinary, family, something like that, quasi criminal public stuff. Um, yeah, what is the kind of vibe of chambers? Are they a very academic-y set, and does that fit with your interests and your sort of skills, or are they a very practical set? Do they write articles, or do they focus on the cases that they've done? They're all like I say, there's so many different things, as you can imagine, with different workplaces. Where are they based? Where do they work? Because a lot of sets sometimes are based in London, but they work primarily or exclusively out of London. All the things that you need to think long and hard about and research. And a top tip here, I suppose, is don't just trust the website, because sometimes the websites for chambers are massive marketing tools a lot of the time. So some chambers will say that they do this area of law, but actually they do very little of it, and they're just kind of hoping to establish themselves. Or they say that they do it, and actually they've not done it for a while. So you need to really dig in a bit more, look at their previous cases, look at what their members of chambers are doing, and have a look to see whether they do what they're holding themselves out as doing presently. Uh, and that's something that a lot of people fall foul of, is that they just look at the website and see, oh, they do child law. I'm interested in child law, fine, but actually only one member of chambers does child law. So
I think that's a good point because just what you said, some applicants do. Unfortunately, it seems like the quick fix, a quick Google, and you
yeah.
just look and then you tell yourself, great, I can apply here because this is what I'm interested in. And
Mhm.
then I know it can probably be a bit embarrassing if you do get an opportunity to go to an interview for you
Mhm.
to be banging on about this area that maybe it's only 5% of their work or 10% of their work, and you're
Mhm.
just completely clueless about other practice areas.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Now that we're on practice areas, how important do you think it is to keep an open mind? Because I know some students
Mhm.
are focused on one particular area, for example. They may not necessarily know if they're interested in something else. So how crucial, how important is it for you to be open minded?
Um, oh, again, it's important to a certain extent, I think. You should, and it all kind of depends where you're going into and what you're actually interested in. But the crime example I can speak of, because I'm doing it now, and it is so important to keep an open mind as to what you're interested in there, because it's with legal aid cuts as they are, and the criminal justice system as it is. We keep hearing on the news that it's on its knees, and it is. It's very hard to just do that, and therefore you should be looking from even this stage, even the application stage, what other kind of stuff am I interested in? Maybe not to the same extent as crime, but what could I see myself doing? What's kind of like crime? And another thing is that when you get to pupillage, and we can chat about this in a bit if it helps, Nia, but you will sometimes get thrown work that's so left field, that's so sort of out of where your comfort zone is, and you've got to just adjust, and you've got to get to grips with it. And it might be part of the kind of case that you're doing. So for me, it might be a criminal case, and a regulatory thing comes up, or it might be that someone in chambers asks you, can you do some research for me, please, on this? In the past week, I've done research on family law in England and Wales, family law in Scotland, so a jurisdiction where I didn't even study the law, and public law and judicial review. And they're all areas that some people, well, no one in chambers does family law, but it's come up as part of a case. And public law is something that some people in my chambers do a bit of, as and when, especially when it relates to crime. But it comes up. So for the sake of getting on in pupillage, it's important to keep an open mind, and for the sake of finding somewhere where you can get a good workflow and you can earn a living, sometimes it's important as well. I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does help. And it also helps to manage expectations.
Mhm.
Because I think the worst thing is to have in mind what you're going to do, and
Mhm.
then you just kind of thrown a curveball. So
Yeah.
it really does help with managing expectations. Now,
Mhm.
do you have some do's and don'ts as it pertains to the written stage of
Mm.
the application process? Things to help us get past that initial paper sift.
Yeah. So I'll try and give a few that was given to me. Obviously, I've never marked a pupillage application, and I was lucky in that I applied for one cycle of pupillage and got it the first time I applied. So I didn't kind of build up that bank of do's and don'ts that a lot of applicants might do. And I think marking applications, you learn a lot more about do's and don'ts. But I'll try and give a few that were given to me. So, you know, with a massive disclaimer, these aren't what I've kind of derived, that they're what have been imparted to me. Um, so a do. So let's start with do's first. Actually, sell yourself. I've said to several people before, you are the expert in you. You know where your skills are. You know where your interests and experiences are. So sell yourself. No one knows you better than you. You are the world leading expert in you. Uh, Start with your best experiences. It's too easy for people marking papers to look at um, the first few things and then kind of drift off and skim the remainder of it. Don't leave the best things, if at all possible, don't leave the best things until right at the bottom of the 20-page application sheet. Um, do do check your work, check your applications, and do have friends check them, especially if you know anyone that is a pupil or that is a barrister or that is a lawyer at all in any jurisdiction. Actually, have them check it through for grammar, have them check it through to make sure you are selling yourself, have them give you feedback on how they think you can make it better, or where your best points actually are, what to leave out, and do that early, and kind of send your applications. I sent different applications to different people, so that I was kind of building up a bank of feedback. So those are a few do's. Don'ts now. Don'ts are a bit more difficult, I suppose. Don't name drop unless it is like a genuine connection that you have to that chambers. Don't just say, oh well, I was once working with so and so who knows so and so from your chambers, and therefore give me an interview. The like, you want to if you've done a mini with someone, say it. And you've done a mini with that person in chambers. If you worked with someone before from that chambers, say it. But know that they will go back to those people in chambers most likely and ask them, what do you think of that person? So don't say you worked with someone if you didn't get along with them. And if they're not going to give you a glowing reference. So that's a don't, I suppose. Another don't is, don't over. Now this is kind of like a general thing rather than specific applications. Don't over apply for pupilages. Some people, I remember once getting advice from a very senior person in my inn to apply for 50. I think they said to me, if I'm not applying for 50 pupilages, then I'm not going to get it. Quote unquote, I think that's what they said. 50 pupil. I don't even know if there are 50 crime pupilages in the UK each year. But that's hard. Don't overstretch yourself, because each and every application will be terrible, because you have to, and this is coming back to a do actually, you have to tailor your application to every chambers, even if they're asking exactly the same question. Why us? And it's a crime set in London that only does crime, or a shipping set in London that only does shipping. Alter it, even in those 200 words, to suit something that they're particularly interested in. You might find that one public set does way more policey type of work, and one public sector does way more judicial review type of work. Um, Factor that in, change your application, tailor it to each set. Those are a few. I didn't. What do you think, Nia? Have you heard any
Yeah,
sort of?
definitely. You always hear, don't, I think one I've heard for sure is, as it pertains to why the bar, don't say that you always wanted to do it from young,
Mm-hmm,
or from the time you were small, because what I've been told is technically you really didn't know the profession that well. Maybe
mm,
you saw a couple TV dramas from then, but you really didn't know the profession quite well to say that you wanted
yeah,
to be a barrister. So
yeah,
that's one.
mm,
I know there's another one. I think it's the same way. Why do you want to be a barrister? And some people say they're very passionate about it. And I know some of us are really passionate about it, but they were saying it doesn't really make you
mm,
stand out. Even
mm,
in the hobbies section, I heard, don't tell people you like reading judgments. Even if
mm,
you do like reading judgments, it's a bit boring. And and the truth is, Chambers also wants to know if they can hire someone that they can get along with as well. Someone, yeah, a piece of advice that stuck with me is, would someone want to ride on the train with you after a long day at court? No one wants to sit with you and talk about a lengthy judgment
mm.
after a grueling period at work. So I think those are the ones that stand out, and it's the stereotypical ones and stuff like writing in jokes. Jokes are always a bit risky.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard so a good one for jokes that I heard is uh if you are at all uncertain about the joke, if you think it's a bit then just delete. It's better safe than sorry. Jokes sometimes fall completely right. Sometimes you think they're perfectly innocent and they're not, and they sometimes people just completely miss the joke. It's very hard writing jokes actually, um, especially when you don't know who your audience is going to be. The passion thing definitely. I was always told. I'm glad you said that. I was told to never say the word passion or passionate, so I didn't ever put it in an application when I was applying for pupillage. I just thought of other words. Like top tip, get your thesaurus out. You don't have to your online thesaurus. You don't have to make everything sort of, and that's another one. That's another kind of don't. You don't have to transition into these barristerial platitudes where you're talking in this. You sort of using fancy long words just to because you think that's what you have to. That's how to be a barrister. But no, like mix it up a bit. Don't be using the same kind of terminology line after line, and make it interesting. Make the application interesting to read, and you can do that in two ways. One, by mixing it up, making sure that you are using different terms, different terminology, making it sort of like not repetitive at all. And another one is inflecting your personality within that. And that's not necessarily cracking jokes. You got to take it seriously. At the end of the day, you're applying to be a barrister. You have to take it seriously, serious job. But you can inflect your personality in various different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good that you're mentioning these things, because I think sometimes, as we draft applications, we tend to forget a couple top tips, and I think that's why you can easily not make it from the paper sift to the interview, because I'm a member of the Aegis committee, and they're all spectacular people that I've interacted with many students and even committee members who I know, with their experiences, have fantastic CVs. So I think those little don'ts, you really have to get them right, because I think we're all stars, and that's not me just throwing around a cliche. That's actually me recognizing everybody that's gotten, especially this far, has we've all been doing something right. So I think you don't want to sell yourself short. by inserting those don'ts
Mm.
in there when you can easily just maybe avoid it.